liberty, and justice for all, celebrates its birthday in a grand fashion. Flags wave and fireworks crackle in the night sky. It's time for picnics, parades, and patriotism. Our hearts swell with devotion when we sing patriotic songs. God bless America, the land that I love, and pledge our allegiance to our country and its flag. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The 4th of July weekend is a time filled with open displays of patriotism. Everywhere during our worship service. Several of you asked if I was going to honor our country's birth during the worship service, and you showed a mix of surprise and relief when I said yes. Recognizing national holidays as a part of worship is a practice that an increasing number of faith communities have come to avoid. And yet these holidays are an important part of our collective identity. Now let me say up front, I am a patriot. I love my country, and I do recognize and celebrate patriotic holidays. But the celebration cannot interfere with or take preference over my worship of God. While I am not comfortable with the claims of religious, what I am not comfortable with are the claims of religious and political leaders that we are a Christian nation and that we should be more Christ-like with our behavior because we were founded as a Christian nation. Really? Let's take a moment to reflect on our country's origins. Our country was founded by a religiously diverse group. Deists, Jews, and Christians, both Protestant and Roman Catholic, shaped our founding documents. They were familiar with the Old Testament and the words of the prophets, and they were not afraid to draw inspiration from the religious writings as they articulated the values of our country, the values upon which our country would be based. Here again the words of the prophet Micah. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. We hear Micah's statement reflected in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with, by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they are reflected in our nation's Pledge of Allegiance, where we affirm that we are a nation with liberty and justice for all. Founders of our country envisioned a nation characterized by liberty and justice for all people. But our country's founders also believed in religious freedom. The First Amendment to our nation's Constitution safeguards our right to religious freedom and autonomy with these words. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of that we claim as Americans. Separation of church and state did not mean abandoning the ideals found in the religious writings. But our founders were very careful to avoid any hint of favoring one religion over another. There was good reason for this. Many who settled in what would become the United States were fleeing religious oppression in their countries of origin. Our founders were opposed to a state-sponsored religion and the religious oppression associated with theocracies. Their gift to us is the freedom from governmental control over which religions may exist in our country. This freedom carries a responsibility. The responsibility that we assure that freedom of religious choice is honored and not limited to those whose religions fit with our beliefs. As Americans, we are citizens of an earthly kingdom. As Christians, we are citizens of God's kingdom. Our country's stated values of liberty and justice for all mirror statements found throughout the Bible. We hear the prophets exhorting God's people to make kindness, love, and justice an earthly reality. And we see Jesus modeling for us how to love the Lord our God with our entire being and our neighbor as ourselves. So where's the problem? There are two. First, when a minister speaks of God's vision of liberty and justice for all, or advocates for the oppressed, he or she is accused of being political. Second, the patriotism of those who ask probing questions about the policies or actions of the United States and its leaders is questioned. But isn't it the duty of every American citizen to question the gaps between the idea one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, and the reality of what is seen and heard? Do we not also have a duty as Christians to question circumstances that threaten the liberty and justice of our neighbor? And should we not, like the prophets, expect the nation's leaders to advocate for the oppressed and to act in behalf of truth, humility, and righteousness? Applying biblical criteria to our country's policies and political leaders should be done very cautiously. Israel and Judah were theocracies, a government that we are trying to avoid. However, when we added under God to our Pledge of Allegiance, we opened the door to consider applying leadership principles and qualities from sacred writings to our expectations of our leaders. We open the possibility of holding our leaders accountable to the values of liberty and justice for all. How do we maintain the balance between religious freedom and freedom of speech? How do we decide which sacred and secular issues should be kept separate? For guidance, I often go to Matthew 22, verses 16 and 17, which you heard earlier. The Pharisees asked Jesus questions about tax paying and about allegiance. Jesus answered, "Give, therefore, to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." In the church, we seek to understand God's vision for the earth and its leaders. We seek to understand how we can bring these values into reality in our daily lives. In the secular community, we seek ways to translate our understanding of God's vision into earthly reality. But in this setting, the community setting, things get political. And it is in the specifics that we often disagree. We disagree on which party or political leader might be the best fit of our vision for a world where God's justice prevails. The separation of issues related to God's justice and our party-specific preferences of how we deal with them is essential, but should not be a part of our words in church. How do we separate partisan politics from our church-based discussions? It starts with the ministry. I am often asked by members of congregations I serve about my political views, including my opinions about political parties and leaders. I do not share this information in church. So if you ask me, you will not get an answer. To do so, and I do not say anything specific about partisan politics when I am representing the church either. To do so would be to violate the spirit of the First Amendment. As a private citizen, I exercise my right to freedom of speech about my choices for political leadership in the appropriate political venue. However, as a minister, I leave this right in the secular venue where it belongs, and I ask that you exercise the same restraint. Discussions of partisan politics within the church is inappropriate. Now, I hope all of you are politically active in your community settings, but in church, partisan politics is a no-no. So, what can we do as a community of faith? We can study the Bible, remembering much of what was said was directed towards nations or theocracies. In other words, having an official religion, which our Constitution prohibits. We can learn how to evaluate issues, policies, and candidates for leadership from a biblical perspective, and how to use these skills as citizens in the communities where we live. We can learn how to listen and practice speaking with one another in ways that show mutual love and respect for all people. We can talk about what God's justice demands of us as Christians and what the love of God and neighbor might look like in the context of today's world. Are we a nation that reflects God's kindness, justice, and mercy? Not yet, but people of vision still speak truth to power, and people who believe in God still pray together. that this secular nation may someday reflect its dreams of liberty and justice for all. So happy birthday, America. May you continue to pursue your dream of being one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.